Hi, everyone. I'm Josh. Welcome back to Learn English Podcast 360. I'm very happy that you are here today. Before we begin, I want to ask you a few simple questions. Have you ever looked at someone else's life and thought, I wish I had what they have? Have you ever seen someone's beautiful house, new car, dream job, or happy family and felt a little sad about your own life? Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you achieve, it still does not feel like enough? And have you ever believed that happiness is waiting somewhere in the future, maybe after you make more money? Maybe after you buy a bigger house? Maybe after you find a better job? Maybe after you become more successful? If your answer is yes, you are not alone. Many people feel this way. In fact, millions of people spend years chasing a better life. Every day they work harder. Every day they want more. More money, more success, more things, more achievements. But strangely, many of them are still unhappy. Today's social media makes this feeling even stronger. Every time we open our phones, we see people traveling around the world. We see beautiful homes, we see perfect families, we see smiling faces, and little by little, we start comparing our lives with theirs. Sometimes we forget that social media only shows the best moments. It does not show the worries. It does not show the pain. It does not show the lonely nights. It does not show the problems behind the smile. Today's story is about a man who spent many years believing that happiness was always one step away. He thought that if he could just get a little more, then he would finally be happy. But one unexpected experience changed the way he saw his life forever. Let's begin. His name was David. David was 35 years old. He lived in a small apartment in a busy city. He had a stable job. He earned enough money to support his family. He had a wife who loved him. He had a young son who was always excited to see him. He also had a few good friends who cared about him. From the outside, many people would say that David had a good life. But David did not see it that way. Instead, he always focused on what he did not have. Every time he looked around, he felt that something was missing. His apartment felt too small. His car felt too old. His salary felt too low. His life felt ordinary. And in his mind, everyone else seemed to be doing better. Every morning, before getting out of bed, David picked up his phone. He opened social media. He saw pictures of people traveling to beautiful places. He saw friends buying new cars. He saw former classmates getting promotions at work. He saw people starting successful businesses. He saw people smiling in perfect photos. The more he looked, the worse he felt. Sometimes he would put down his phone and quietly think to himself, why is everyone moving forward except me? Why does everyone seem happier than I am? What am I doing wrong? These thoughts followed him everywhere. At work, at home, even on weekends. Without realizing it, David was slowly turning his attention away from the good things in his own life. There were many things he should have been grateful for, but he hardly noticed them anymore. His wife cared deeply about him. Every morning she asked if he slept well. Every evening she asked how his day was. She supported him during difficult times. But David was often too busy thinking about money and success to notice her love. His son was always happy when he came home. The little boy would run to the door with a big smile. Sometimes he would wait by the window, watching for his father's car. But David often arrived home tired and distracted. His mind was somewhere else. His body was at home, but his thoughts were far away. David also had good friends, friends who would answer his calls, friends who would help him if he needed support, friends who truly cared about him. Yet weeks and sometimes months passed without David calling them. Then there was his health. David could walk. He could run. He could work. He could enjoy life. But because he had always been healthy, he never thought much about it. He simply expected it. He believed it would always be there. The same was true for many small moments in his life. A hot cup of coffee in the morning, a quiet dinner with his family, a peaceful afternoon after work, the sound of his son laughing, the feeling of coming home after a long day. These simple moments were everywhere, but they had become invisible to him. David was always looking ahead, always chasing the next thing, always thinking about what was missing. Deep inside, he carried one belief, a belief that guided almost everything he did. I will be happy when I have more. More money, more success, more things, more achievements. Then one day something unexpected happened. David's company asked him to travel to a small town far from the city. He needed to spend several days there for work. At first he was not excited. In fact, he was disappointed. He thought, "This place sounds boring. There is nothing interesting there. I would rather stay in the city." But he had no choice. A few days later, he packed his bag and left. The town was small and quiet. There were no tall buildings, no busy shopping centers, no luxury hotels. Life moved much more slowly there. At first, David felt uncomfortable. Everything seemed too simple, too quiet, too ordinary. One afternoon, after finishing his work, David decided to take a walk. As he walked down a small road, he noticed an older man sitting outside a simple house. The house was small. The yard was small. There was nothing special about it. The man did not look rich. He was not famous. He did not seem to own many things. Yet there was something unusual about him. He was smiling. Not the kind of smile people use for photos. Not the kind of smile people show on social media. It was a calm smile, a peaceful smile. The kind of smile that comes from deep inside. David noticed that the man smiled while watering his plants. He smiled while talking to neighbors. He smiled while sitting alone and watching the sunset. The more David watched him, the more curious he became. Finally, one day, David gathered enough courage to speak with him. As they talked, David learned that the older man had lived there for many years. His life was simple. His home was simple. Everything about him seemed simple, and yet he looked happier than many wealthy people David had met. That night, David could not stop thinking about him. Lying in bed, he asked himself one question again and again. Why does he seem happier than me? The next day, David met the man again, and this time, the older man began to tell him a story about his own life, a story that would change David forever. The old man looked out toward the fields. The evening sun was slowly going down. Everything around them felt calm and quiet. Then he smiled and said something David would never forget. For many years, I looked at what I didn't have. I forgot to see what I already had. David listened carefully. The old man continued. When I finally opened my eyes, I realized I was already rich. David looked at him with surprise. Rich? The man did not have a big house. He did not drive an expensive car. He did not wear expensive clothes. So what did he mean? The old man smiled again. I was rich because I had people who loved me. I was rich because I could walk, breathe, and see the sunrise every morning. I was rich because I had friends who cared about me. I was rich because I was alive. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. David sat quietly. Something inside him began to change. The words were simple, but they felt powerful. It was as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room. For years, David had spent his life looking at people who had more money, bigger houses, better jobs, and more success. But he had never stopped to ask himself a simple question: what do I already have? For the first time in many years, David looked inward instead of outward, and what he saw surprised him. The evening became darker, the air became cooler, but inside David's mind something was becoming clearer than ever before. Maybe happiness was not waiting somewhere far away. Maybe happiness had been walking beside him all along. He just had not noticed it. The next day, David finished his work and began his trip home. As the bus moved down the long country road, he looked out the window. His mind kept returning to the old man's words. For many years, I looked at what I didn't have. David slowly closed his eyes. Then memories began to appear. He remembered the smile on his son's face every evening when he came home from work. "Dad!" His son would run to the door with excitement. David smiled. How many times had he been too busy to notice that moment? Then he remembered family dinners, simple meals, simple conversations, nothing special. Yet somehow those moments now felt very valuable. He remembered the friends who had helped him during difficult times, friends who answered his calls, friends who listened when he needed support, friends who never asked for anything in return. Then he thought about his health. He could walk, he could work, he could travel, he could spend time with the people he loved. Millions of people around the world would gladly trade places with him, and yet he had spent years focusing on what was missing. The bus continued moving. David looked outside again. For the first time, he noticed the trees, the sky, the sunlight, the beauty of ordinary things. Suddenly, he understood something. He had spent most of his life looking up, looking at people who seemed more successful, more wealthy, more fortunate. But he'd never looked around. He had never truly seen the blessings already present in his life. A deep feeling filled his heart. It was not excitement, it was not pride, it was gratitude. And gratitude felt different. It felt peaceful. David quietly whispered to himself, "I am not poor. I simply forgot to appreciate what I already have." At that moment, something changed forever. When David returned home, nobody noticed a big change at first. His house was still the same. His car was still the same. His job was still the same. His bank account was still the same. Nothing outside had changed, but something inside had. David began creating new habits, small habits, simple habits, but powerful ones. Every evening, he spent more time with his family. Instead of checking social media during dinner, he listened to his wife and son. Instead of comparing his life to other people's lives online, he paid attention to his own life. He started writing down 3 things he was grateful for every night. Sometimes the list was very simple: a good meal, a healthy body, a pleasant conversation, a peaceful morning, a beautiful sunset. The more he practiced gratitude, the more things he found to appreciate. And something interesting happened. He became happier. Not because he had more, but because he finally saw what he already had. No miracle happened. He did not win the lottery. He did not become a millionaire. He did not buy a luxury house. His life looked almost exactly the same as before. But his experience of life was completely different. He smiled more. He worried less. He enjoyed ordinary moments. And every day felt a little lighter, a little brighter, a little more meaningful. Now let me pause the story for a moment, because David's story is not only about David. In many ways, it is about all of us. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need more money, more success, more followers, more possessions, more achievements. And while there is nothing wrong with wanting to grow and improve, there is a danger we must be careful about. The danger is forgetting to appreciate the present while chasing the future. Lesson number 1: comparison steals joy. When we constantly compare our lives to other people's lives, we stop noticing the good things already around us. We focus on what is missing instead of what is present, and that can make even a good life feel empty. Lesson number 2: more is not always better. Many people believe happiness will arrive after the next promotion, the next purchase, the next achievement. Sometimes it does, but often the feeling lasts only a short time. Then the search begins again, because happiness cannot be built only on getting more. Lesson number 3: gratitude changes everything. Gratitude does not change your circumstances. It changes the way you see your circumstances. The same life can feel completely different when viewed through grateful eyes. Before we finish today's story, I would like to ask you a few questions. What is one thing in your life that you are grateful for today? What have you been taking for granted? And what if happiness is already closer than you think? Maybe the thing you have been searching for is not somewhere far in the future. Maybe part of that happiness has been beside you all along. Maybe it is in the people who love you. Maybe it is in your health. Maybe it is in the simple moments you experience every day. Perhaps you only need to slow down long enough to notice it. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope this story brought you a little peace, a little comfort, and maybe a new way of looking at your own life. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep practicing your English every day, one small step at a time. I'm Josh, and this is Learn English Podcast 360. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.